This conference will now be recorded.
Naresh, are you there? Just let's wait for Naresh to join.
How's the effect of Corona over there? I think you are into Europe, right?
Sorry, what is the question?
How's the status of Corona? This all virus which has been spread worldwide. So,
Yes, everywhere is the same picture.
okay, how's arrested out over here?
So,
Yep.
yes, so nothing is good now.
No, nothing
We
is
don't
good.
know.
The moment
We
we
don't
go
know
outside,
till how many days. Yeah, sorry?
the moment we are going out, either we are getting attacked by Corona or else we are getting attacked by police. That's the status over here.
Yes, yes. Anyway, let's hope for the best.
Yes.
What happens?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Naresh, have you joined?
Yeah, hi Viren. Yeah, I joined.
Yeah, hi. Okay, so if you last week we did not have the class, but if you recollect, we started on the overview on the charge management, where basically I think I did not show you like how does a freight agreement looks like and all, right?
Right.
Uh-huh.
So, yeah, so today we'll complete the freight agreement part, just explaining on an end user level. So if you recollect, if we go from top to bottom approach, so initially in the system, we need to set up scales, we need to set up chart type, we need to set up rate tables, we need to set up TCCCS, which is a transportation charge calculation sheet, and when all this information is available, then we basically create a freight agreement. And whenever the freight agreement is created, based on the freight agreement creation, your charge calculation will happen automatically in your freight order. So we need to have a freight agreement in place before you can actually trigger the charge calculation in FO. So if I go from the bottom up approach, like rather than creating scales from configuration, first of all, I'll show you how does a freight agreement look like, so that you can see where all these linkages are done. Okay. So if I go to NWBC, so I click on NWBC, and if I go, and if I go into the particular freight agreement, so if you see this, Freight agreement management. And if I go to display freight agreement, yeah, just 1 minute, the freight agreement is getting opened. So once the freight agreement opens, you can see here from where all the linkages are done. Okay. So I open any one existing freight agreement. So if you go here, you'll find the first line is the agreement number, and then the next one is your existing any version. So I click on my agreement number. So let me see what are the freight agreements I have created in my ID. So that will open only one of the existing freight agreement. So if you go here, let me see if I have anything for created by. So I'll give my ID here, Virendra. Oh, sorry, VEE. So these are the freight agreements which I have, for example. So I click on this first freight agreement. So this is what you get in your freight agreement screen. Is my screen not visible to everyone?
Yes, Viren, I can see.
Yes, we
Yeah. So this is the agreement number. This is the agreement description. If you're activating version management means if you want to actually create a version for every freight agreement you create, for every changes you make, then it will be captured in the form of a version. So I hope you know the concept of version, because it is also there in ECC, PO, sales order, anything. Okay. In case you want to use any external agreement number, like means you want to refer to any external agreement which your carrier is sending manually, and you want to mention any text so that you can refer that agreement number, you can put it in this value, in this field. The involved parties. So involved parties is very important, because if you see here, the involved parties basically is nothing but it's your organizational unit and it's your business partner. So organizational unit means purchase organization. So if you recollect, in any freight order, we always maintain carrier and purchase organization. So because in your freight agreement also, you have your organizational unit as purchase organization and business partner as carrier. So once these two entries are validated against your freight order, the charge calculation works. Okay. So you need to be very careful, like whenever you are creating an agreement, and if you want an automatic charge calculation to happen in your freight order, then you need to maintain the same combination of your organizational unit and business partner. Okay. And then you have your time zone. So time zone in CET. Then you have a validity period. Validity period means every agreement or contract should have a validity period, because maybe the rate may change, right, after 1 year or something. So the validity period may change, or you can keep it same as well. This is agreement type. So agreement type means it's a document type, like you have your standard ECC contract type, scheduling agreement type. Similarly, we have the agreement type. So this is configurable. I'll show you where we create this FRA1. Then you have a document currency. So document currency is the currency with which you want to evaluate your agreement, whether it's in euro, whether it's in USD and all. Dimensional weight profile. So this is actually used basically when you want to measure your charge calculation per kg. Okay. So for example, if you are determining your price per kg, then only this dimensional weight profile is used. Weight means mass. So if you are having some type of requirement where this is based, where your charge calculation is specified per kg, then only the dimensional weight profile can be used, or else it's not required. Then comes the calculation sheet template. If you recollect, I told you that every freight agreement needs to have an assignment with your charge calculation sheet. So this charge calculation sheet TCCS, either you can keep it at your header level, but even if you keep it blank, no problem. The major thing is that at your item level, you need to keep your calculation sheet here. Okay. So if you even do it at header level, but in the item level, you need to maintain. The reason is that now we are calculating for one item, one calculation sheet. Maybe in one freight agreement, you can have multiple line items, and multiple line items can have either the same calculation sheet or it may have different calculation sheet. So it is always better to maintain it at item level rather than at header level. Okay. Now every item has an item type. So this is also configurable. This ITYP, I'll show you where we configure this. Item type will actually see, for example, maybe in one freight agreement, you are actually creating an agreement for your service as well as for your normal transportation process. So you can have two different item types, one for service, one for transportation. So item type will actually tell you the attribute based on which the transportation process or the charge calculation is to be finally determined in your freight order. Okay. This is the service type. Service type, as I told you, in case you are not using your freight agreement for service, then the service type should be used. Service means where like cleaning, fumigation, documentation, clearance, all those stuff. So if you are using a freight agreement for service, you need to add a service type. If you are using freight agreement for transportation, then you don't need to add this service type. Then if you scroll to the right side, if you see here, this is the calculation sheet. So that means this is the place where you actually assign this part, TCCS to freight agreement. So there are two ways. Either if you see here, it's showing calculation sheet template. So either you can do it with reference to a template, or if you don't create a template, you can actually use it directly a calculation sheet. What is the difference between these two? The difference is if your calculation sheet template is configurable, that means you can put it in your configuration and you can transport it to the production. But this calculation sheet, if you are not using a template, this calculation sheet you can use it only in NWBC. That means you need to actually maintain the calculation sheet in every client. So I always suggest use a template, because if you are using a template, means you can reuse the template in your other calculation sheet process also, and it helps you save time. So you have to just go to insert, add calculation sheet template. Okay. Then if you scroll to the right side, against the calculation sheet, you can also maintain a shipping type. So if you want to say this particular calculation sheet is valid for a specific shipping type, for a specific mode of transport, for a specific movement type, so you can put all the values here, stage type, stage category. Okay, if this particular calculation sheet is valid for a specific value, or else you need to create it. And this information is not valid. Actually, we never use this unless you have very specific reference of any agreement number, or if you want to actually specify that this agreement is valid for a specific arrival date, departure date. If you want to put some hard code on this, like for example, if my shipment is valid, if my shipment has a particular departure and arrival window, then only my calculation sheet is valid, or else it is not valid. So if it is such type of requirement is there, then only it makes sense to use this, or else as of now it's not required. Any question till now?
Yeah. So,
Fine, Veera.
yeah, just one question on that weight profile that we have used earlier. So you mentioned that based on the weight, we would be doing the charge calculation and all that. So in those cases, do we still consider the distance, or it's just based on the weight?
Yeah, I will now show. I will show you what are the criteria I have considered to do the charge calculation. It is now coming. Okay.
Okay.
So this is just a pricing procedure. Now, if you there is an option, if you see display calculation sheet. So this calculation sheet, what you have seen here, you have to. If I click on display, So now you see the assignment. So from TCCS, the charge calculation, you need to see what are the charge types and what are the rate tables. So my rate table is my condition record and my charge type is my condition type. Okay. So when you open your calculation sheet, you'll see this is the charge type. So I've created two charge type. One charge type is a manual charge type and another is a rate table derived charge type. When I say rate table derived charge type, now if you see here, every charge type is linked with a rate table, right? So when I say it's a manual, that means I don't need to assign any charge calculation sheet template here. See, because this is a manual, the rate table template is blank. Because this is not manual, it is linked to a rate table, so you'll find a rate table is linked with it. How we do all those linkages, that's part of the configuration. But if you follow the sequence now, so we have created a freight agreement. Within a freight agreement, we have a charge calculation sheet, and every charge calculation sheet is linked to a charge type, and every charge type is linked to a rate table. That is what the sequence is. Okay. Now, if I click, for example, this one. So there are some few attributes which you can see down below. If I go down now. So these are all the setup what you see when you are setting up your charge type and rate table. So for example, line item 20. So this is my line item 20. It's like a pricing procedure, right? In your calculation sheet template. So line item is 20, charge type is there. If it is a manual, that means if you require any manual charge type, you'll find it here. So in my case, if I click on the second one, you'll see that because it's a manual charge type, you will find a tick mark here. But for line item 20, it's not a manual, but it is based on rate table, so you'll not find this here. Okay. Then all these things, rounding profile, adjustment profile. When I come into the configuration, I'll show you I'll tell you what are the implication of all these things. The most important thing what you need to see here is that first of all, whether the charge type what you are using is a manual or not. Okay. Second thing, you need to see whether the validity period is there within your calculation sheet. That is another important thing. Okay. And these things all I will explain you when I come to the configuration. All these are derived from there. If I click on the rate tab, so rate tab will actually tell you what are the rate I'm going to charge for this particular charge type. Okay. So because it has a rate table, so the rate table template is fixed. This amount is blank. Now if you go into the line item 30, because it was a manual charge type, you see the amount is given 1000, but there is no rate table template. So that is the difference between a manual and a automatic charge calculation. Okay. So we'll be using the template approach. So either you use a template approach or we use a rate table approach. Generally we use a template approach. So whenever you use a template approach, line item 20, you'll see automatic or rate table value will be determined. But actually this is the part what we need to configure. Okay. And here you can actually specify what is the minimum amount and maximum amount. Yeah, tell me. Question?
No, nothing from my side.
So can you please once again explain this automatic and manual? I mean template and
automatic means what? Automatic means automatic means you need to have a rate table template. You need to have a condition record. That is what is automatic. Manual means you don't need any condition record. That means you don't need any rate table. So the basic difference between a manual and an automatic is, if you see, that's what I showed you. If you go into line item 30, you don't need to maintain any rate table. Okay, because that is manual. Because for example, demurrage is manual. You don't have any predefined condition, right? You cannot say that if my distance is 1000 kilometer, my manual charge will be 100. You cannot do that because that is not a predefined rate. But those charge types which has a predefined rate, for example, this sample is based on my specific source location, my destination location. So for example, this is your criteria. So in that case, you'll see this is linked to your rate table template. Okay. When I come to the rate table template, I'll show you how the rates are determined. So for manual, you don't need any rate table. That is the basic difference. Yes, tell me.
Yeah, you said like in the item, for the item 30, you have this rate table template as Z square S4HANA underscore RT, right? So
Line
how
item
that,
30,
uh,
yeah,
I mean,
I'll not show you where we
yeah,
link
yeah,
this. I'll show you.
yeah. Oh, okay. Uh,
I'll show you just where we link this. I'll just go through these tabs and then I'll tell you. Then if you come to the classification tab means you need to maintain some charge category, charge subcategory. So every charge type, just remember every charge type, whether it's manual or non-manual, needs to have a linkage to this. So this charge category and subcategory is actually used, for your ERP integration. Whenever you are transferring your fetch order or fetch settlement document from TM to ECC, to create a service PO and service entry sheet. That's the reason why this category is required. I'll show you where we maintain this. As of now, just note, every charge needs to have a linkage with category and subcategory. And if your charge has to be maintained mandatory, that means in one calculation sheet, if you want that charge has to be maintained as a mandatory, that then you have to put a tick mark mandatory. If your charge type is relevant for tax, that means, for example, in standard ECC, we used to have MWST and all those tax types, right? Based on the departure country, you have a tax procedure. So how will you know whether a particular charge type is a tax relevant or not? So if you put a tick mark here, then system considers it as a tax relevant. And statistical charge means what? Statistical means the values are not, even though you put a rate values, but when it is transferred to ECC, it does not consider the rate value. That is what we call as a statistical charge. Then you come to the precondition. So precondition means what? Precondition means whenever you are determining. So this is all about determination of your calculation sheet, right? So here you can specify how calculation sheet determination will work in your freight agreement. Whether it has a specific trade lane, whether it has a specific service type, charge type, whether it has a specific source location, destination location, means of transport, transport mode, then you can specify. So these are all related to your BRA plus. So in BRA plus, basically you can specify if you have multiple calculation sheet, and if you want to put a criteria how this calculation sheet will be determined, in that case you can use this precondition. So precondition is the way of determining your charge calculation sheet in your freight agreement. So it is if it is based on trade lane, or if you want to determine your calculation sheet based on your service, or if you want to do it based on your business partner. That means you want to say, okay, if my specific business partner is X, then only my calculation sheet Y will be triggered, something like that. So whenever you come to precondition is always asking for BRA plus. Okay. Then comes your note. Note means if you want to specify any text and all, you can specify it. Now I'll show you. So if you see the first one, you have your association with your rate table template. Now if you click on display rate table, you can see what does the rate table contains. So if you go down, if I click on the rate table now, my rate table contains, click on dates and values tab. So if you see here in the rate table tab, I'm telling, okay, these are my parameter. That means in the rate table, I'm telling source location and destination location as a parameter. And if my source location is this, if my destination location is this, my rate is this. So now if you see associate with this tab, every TCCS is linked with a rate table, and every rate table is linked with a scale. So so these are my scale, source location and destination location. So you are into a rate table, and every rate table is linked to a scale. And if you want to see what are the scales, you can directly go into the scale items, and you can see, okay, my scales are source location, destination location. So whatever scales you are maintaining here, that will actually come in this, the vertical, the number of columns will be based on that. So because I have chosen scale item as my source location and destination location, so that's why you see only 2 columns. If you want to say, if you want to add more criteria, for example, gross weight, means of transport, something like that, then you are accordingly your column will increase, and you can have multiple entries here. Okay, so this rate is 1500. Clear?
Yeah. Yeah.
So this is how the linkage is done. Again, every freight agreement will have a TCCS, every TCCS will have a rate table, every rate table needs to have a charge type, and every rate table is linked to a scale. And always remember, there has to be a validity period mentioned here. So whenever you are setting up any validity period, you need to click on the set status and click on released. If this is not released, your agreement charge values will not be considered in your freight order. So this is one part what you need to consider. And second part, when you go back, if you go back, if you go up, if you go to set status, you have to click on released. So these two released, that's why agreement status always has to be released. If this release is not working, then your freight order charge calculation will not work. Okay.
Okay.
Do we have the settings for charge calculation sheet as well, or it's only for rate table and freight agreement?
No, a lot of configuration is there. I'm just showing you at the end user level. So I just showed you like so different things you have. I'll show you that one.
Okay.
So okay. So if you see here, when I click on calculation sheet here, if you see precondition we have discussed, that means how the calculation sheet determination will happen, like based on the BRA plus. And apart from the precondition, we also have, so this is a precondition rule which I showed you, right? Trade lane partner determination. You can also specify some dimensions. So dimensions means if you want to say that my calculation sheet template is based on specific length with height of any type of pallets or something like that, you have the option to specify the dimension as well. You can also basically determine, but dimensions and capacities, please note, in standard we generally use it for your SFP process, strategic freight procurement process. We generally don't require it so much in the charge calculation. So this is actually used when you want to get a contractual or quotation from a carrier and tell them, okay, I want 100 kg, I want to transport 100 kg of material, please provide me the rate. So there the gross weight will be 100, something like that. So that is what we call as a SFP. So so these dimensions and capacities as of now don't consider anything now. It is more of a SFP process, strategic freight procurement process, where you are asking some rate, and based on that the carrier says, okay, I can only confirm 100 kg or 2 containers or 40 feet containers or 10 quantities on a daily basis or weekly basis, something like that. So this is mainly used for your freight quotation purpose. Okay, this is the notes. And if you want to specify any commodity code, so for international shipment, every article can have a specific commodity code. So you can actually give the range, commodity from and to, click on inserting. So this is what your freight agreement is about. And if you go into the header level, this is your business partners, what you have.
So Viren, just one quick question. So the commodity code is different from the item number?
Yes. So for commodity code, you actually have a specific separate code for that, but it is not mandatory.
Okay.
Right? It is not going to stop you. For example, mainly in the CPG industry, they only observe, like for example, if you're transporting any frozen product or dangerous goods product, they have some specific codes for those products, so that during the customs declaration and all, they do it based on the code. Okay.
Okay. So it's the generic codes given by governments, kind of.
No, it can be within the, yeah, it can be given by, not by government. It's basically within the industry you create. Every company has their own unique commodity code.
Okay.
Then this is the business partner, which comes from your general data. If you want to add some specific text or notes, you can add it in the notes tab. Administrative data, you know it, like who has changed what type of data. Output management means if you want to trigger any printout or fax or email of your freight agreement, then only you need to use the output management. So like for example, if you click on this freight agreement part, and here you can see the document preview. If you want to see what are the contents of a freight agreement, if you want to send this freight agreement as email, then you need to specify the recipient type and the recipient email ID. And here you can also specify or attach any document. This is the versions what you have. And finally, Excel integration. Excel integration means what? Excel integration means you can download the rate table template. Suppose if your rate is changing, you want to update the rates, right? So in that case, you need to download, go to the download option, save it into Excel, and then upload after making the changes in the rate. So the rate change will happen automatically. So that is what we call as an Excel integration. Okay. And here you can copy as, you can delete, you can edit, cancel, save. You can set the status. Always before it's ready for use, click on release, or else it will not work. If you want to deactivate a freight agreement, click on deactivate. You can generate a new version as well. And these are basically mainly related if you want to create a freight order or freight booking from an agreement. So suppose if you, for what happens actually for ad hoc shipment, ad hoc means if you are on an emergency, if you actually want to do a transportation. So basically what happens, rather than doing a planning and all, because you have an existing agreement with a particular carrier, you give him a call, you tell them please do the transportation, and at that time, because they need some execution document also to create it, right? Without execution you cannot track the movement, so you can directly create a freight order or freight booking directly from here. Okay, so this is all your freight agreement is about. Any question?
Yeah. So Viren, so every carrier, it's a mandate to have a freight agreement before we do any operations, or could there be a scenario without freight agreement also? Sometimes we do transactions with the carrier.
If you don't have a, yeah, if you don't have any freight agreement with a carrier, then the automatic charge calculation will not happen. Maybe initially you put it on a manual note, and later on, once your agreement is confirmed with the carrier, then the charge calculation will happen automatically. So till the time freight agreement is not there, you have to input the charge manually.
Okay.
So I'll just show you how to create a freight agreement. Suppose I copy this. I'm going the top down means bottom up approach. Okay. I'll just, first of all, I've just shown you how to create a freight agreement, and then when I come back to the configuration, I'll show you so for example, I give a test freight agreement. Okay. So this one I give a different agreement carrier. So I give the same time zone. The valid period is, for example, today is 28th. I don't need to give the calculation sheet template here. I can skip this. Not mandatory. Just an external reference number. The most important thing is this business partner. Suppose I want to have a different carrier agreement on that. If you see here, there are multiple line items. These multiple line items means you suppose if you have got multiple carrier which is having the same agreement with the centralized purchasing organization, then you have the option to have multiple carrier for that, or you can have a single carrier. So whether you want to have this a single carrier or multi carrier, there is a configuration. If you are using through the configuration, you can control whether you want to have the option to input multiple carrier. If you don't want the option to use multiple carrier, then you can through the configuration you can control that. So I'm using a different carrier. So for example, I'm using just thinking partner role. So I'll search by partner role because I only want to have the business partner per carrier, right? So the partner role for carrier is CRM010 because I want to see what are my existing carriers in the system. So if I click now search, so I only have this type of carriers. So I want to go with, for example, dog carrier. Okay. So I just create the name accordingly. Test FA. This is my carrier. Now what I will do. So 100 ITYP. Okay. So generally what will happen? This will be blank actually. Okay. So I just delete it, for example. So then I click on insert item. See, when I click on insert item, automatic you can put in the item type. So we can also control the configuration as well. If system requires an item type or not. Okay. So I require an item type, for example, ITYP. And if you go down now, you will see nothing, right? Because I have not entered the calculation sheet now. See, all blank, correct? Now I will enter the calculation sheet template. So what was the template? The template was Z4 S4HANA TCCS. So suppose this is the template we have created. I'll show you where and how to create it. So I'll just enter the calculation sheet template. So once I click on a calculation sheet template, I need to click on this add calculation sheet. And when I click on this add calculation sheet, based on my configuration, system will automatically populate all these charts types and all. Okay, because this is all for my configuration. So that's what I told you. When you are adding a TCCS, this TCCS has to be assigned to your agreement, then only this rate table and charts type will come up. Okay, now see, this is a manual charts type. I don't have my rate table template here, right? This is blank, correct? So I can put some values here so that it can be captured during my freight order creation. So when I go here, I can specify the amount as 1000 euro. Okay. And for the first one, because I have a rate table template here, so I will not put any amount here, but I will then go to display rate table. I will go to dates and values tab. See, automatically, because my rate table is linked with my TCCS in the configuration, this rate table is linked with my scale. Automatically, see, source location, destination location is coming because my scale is based on my source and destination. So if I go to rates, I will just specify the value here, SP underscore something. Suppose SP underscore 1003, and it is my destination location is anything, customer location. Suppose I go to the customer Mike Milton and I put in the value 1000. Okay. So you can insert again one more column and you can add one more, multiple rates like that. Okay. Clear? Suppose I insert one more rate. Shipping point is SP underscore 1003 and my destination location is different. So I'll now use David Klein as my customer and I put another range, for example, 800 euros. So I put now enter. Okay.
So Viren, how do we determine this $1,000 or $800? It's based on some quotation that we do in the earlier process.
That you need to know, right? When you're creating an agreement, either way, maybe you got this value from your earlier contractual rate, or if it is an existing carrier, right? You know that he charges this much. Maybe you need to have an Excel through email or something like that.
Okay.
So either, okay, because see, for an existing trade lane, you know the rates. So they will give you an Excel, and then based on that, you have to populate the values. If you are going for a new trade lane where you don't have an existing agreement or rate, you need to create this SAP process. SAP means, like, for example, you send him a freight quotation. Based on that, he submits the quotation, you get the rate either through email or fax or something like that, and then you create this manually.
Okay. Okay.
And note that sometimes you don't get to see all the fields. In that case, you need to click on display all rate combinations. So this will actually display all the combinations you have maintained for the rates. Okay. And then once you have maintained this, see, the status is this one. You have to click on the status released. This is very important. So you'll get this message, rate table released, and then you go back. And then you click on save. So data is saved, and once your freight agreement is saved, the next thing is that you need to click on the status released. See, the earlier part, what we have selected on release, if you don't click on release there, you need to go with this release with rate table, because you have to release the rate table, right? But if you have released the rate table already, then you don't need to click on this, but rather just released.
Okay.
So your agreement is released for use because the status is now released, and you just now click on save. Okay.
Okay.
Any question?
Yeah, just one question, Viren. So we are defining the rate table based on the source and destination location, right? So So it means that irrespective of the route they take to reach the destination, the rate would be the same.
Yes. So see here you can actually use multiple ways. So I am just assuming that my charge calculation will be based on my source and destination location only. See, route, as I told you, actually the route what you consider for ECC is not the same as you for TM. So TM has specific scales. Scales means is a parameter based on which you want to do a charge calculation. It can be based on location, it can be based on zone, it can be based on country, it can be based on gross weight, volume, carrier, means of transport, mode of transport. There are multiple. I'll show you in the configuration. So many variation is there. Okay. So you need to, first of all, in your blueprinting phase, you need to discuss with your business how your rate is calculated, how your charge calculation is done. What are the factors I need to consider when I'm doing my charge calculation? So when they will tell you all the factors, then you need to find out in standard TM whether those factors exist or not. If those factors means I'm considering this part, scale. Okay. So always know your scale should be the first criteria. Your scale and charge type is the most important thing, because you need to find out which scales. So in my case, I'm using the scale, source and destination location, because I think based on location, my charge calculation will be done. But maybe in your project, you don't want to do the charge calculation based on location. It may be based on a different factor. So you need to check the standard factors, that is the standard scales. If the standard scales are available, that's okay. If they are not, you have to do a development, because scales are customizable, but within the scale you have a logic to retrieve the values. That is technical. You have to do a development for that. So I'll come to this later on, the scales part, but yes, that is how it works.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks.
So once you have done this, before you actually create a freight agreement, the most important thing is that you need to determine a freight agreement type, and how you assign this freight agreement type to this item type. Okay. So when I go into the configuration, SPRO, I go to transport management. I'll go to master data. I go to agreement RFQs, and I go to freight agreement. Sorry, not this one. Agreement and service products. And here you need to first of all see the components of freight agreement types. Okay. So in my case, it's FRA1, right? So I click on FRA1. So this is the name, this is the description. If you want to create with reference to an agreement, if I go into an agreement, you have the option to create an data saves. 1 minute. Yeah, you can also create an RFQ master. Okay, request for quotation. So this request for quotation part, basically it's part of your SFP process. So see, ultimate objective of SFP is to create a freight agreement. But if you want to refer an existing freight agreement and create your RFQ, then in that case you need to specify here what is the document type of your RFQ. Okay. If you want to do a track change, that means who has made what type of change in a freight agreement, the track change is required. This multiple party, if you are putting a check mark for multiple party, that means you can enter multiple business partners here. When I say multiple business partner means this one. See, you can enter multiple carrier and all, right? If you are removing the check mark from there, then only system will allow you to enter one organizational unit and one business partner. Okay. So this multiple party has a good impact on your setup of freight agreement. Clear?
Yeah. So these multiple parties or multiple carriers belongs to the same organization?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So maybe you can reuse one agreement and you can float this agreement to multiple carrier because you feel the rates and all are same, right?
Right.
So there is a centralized negotiation with all the carriers by the single purchase organization. In that case, rather than creating multiple agreement, you can use a create single agreement, and you can populate multiple carrier there. So if you want to use multiple party concept, then only put a tick mark, or else don't require.
Okay.
Approval workflow. Approval workflow means before the freight agreement, charges can flow into a freight order. If you want to activate that, a workflow must be there so that a finance controller should approve it before it can be used for your freight order. Then you can use the activate the workflow process. So workflow, I think you know it, right? Where it asks for the approval and all. Okay. Edit agreement. If you want to edit agreement, or if you don't want to have the option to not edit, generally we keep it blank because you always want to edit an agreement. This is the number range. Notes. So wherever you want to use the notes in your freight agreement. So if you see, you have a notes tab, right? So this notes tab can only work if you actually have a text schema, because text within a notes you can specify the text type and all. So the text type basically depends on the text schema. See, then calculation sheet template. So if you see here, this value which you can put it here, the header level, you can actually predefine it by populating here in the configuration as well. As I told you, in the header level it is not mandatory, but still if you want to put it in your header level and you know that you have a predefined calculation sheet template for a specific freight agreement type, then you can put it, or else keep it blank, because you may have multiple freight calculation sheet template, right, later on. So you have to overwrite it anyway. This I showed you time determination, this time determination type, departure calendar, transit calendar, arrival calendar. These actually, frankly telling you, I've never used in any of the project. But what I feel, so if you go here, this is mainly required if you want to populate these fields automatically here. See this time, departure, arrival. That means if your freight agreement is dependent on time, that means for based on your arrival, departure of your particular shipment process, if you feel that your freight agreement rate varies accordingly, then only this is required. But this is hardly the case. I've never seen any project which uses this. WD apply config means what? This means if you want to do any screen enhancement, field enhancement, then you use this. WD means web improve. So if you want to change the sequence of your screen, or you want to add some specific new fields in your screen, then your developer will actually send you this link. Enable item flow. Enable item flow will only work if basically if you want to tell that I want to maintain my item type here. Okay, this item type. So this insert item type, this item will only be activated if you are activating that. Okay, if you don't want to maintain any item information here, then you can deselect this, but generally we should do it. BW relevance means what? That means for BIB or reporting purpose, if you want to activate the freight agreement, then you do it. Now you have got, see, default A4 type, default service order type, default freight booking type. That means if you want to reuse the creation, so you have seen here, right, from a follow-up I showed you, you can create a service order, you can create a freight document, anything. So now when I'm creating a service order freight document, it will ask you what is the document type. So you can specify your document type here. What is the document type that will be created when I'm creating my FOFB directly from my freight agreement? Duplication check. In case you want to make a check that no duplicate freight agreement is created, then you can do this. Display total capacity. So total capacity, this is mainly used if you are using an SFP process, where when your freight agreement goes to the carrier confirms, okay, this is the amount of capacity I would like to suggest for this shipment. So if you want to display the total capacity, you can do it. I don't know why EWM integration is there, because we never use EWM integration with reference to freight agreement, unless there is one thing which is called as a warehouse billing concept. So in the warehouse billing, you generally use the suppose if you are using a certain yard in the warehouse for performing a transportation process, then you need to pay to that warehouse who owns that yard. In that case, this is used. And output profile and add output profile means basically this part where you can see what are the outputs you have. This one, output management. Okay. If you want to make any change in your output profile and all, you can do it. If you have any specific precondition, that means if you want to say precondition, as I told you, this is mainly used for agreement precondition. That means suppose there are 10 different agreements, and if you want to say no, my agreement type FRA1 will only be triggered if I have a specific mode of transport, specific service line, specific stage category, specific traffic direction, then only FRA1 should be there, or else it will not be triggered. So if you want to put an additional condition for determining the agreement type, then only these preconditions are used. And finally, if you see, this FRA1 is assigned to ITYP. So this is the item type. This is what you get here. This is ITYP. This one. Okay. So now the thing is that before you actually assign your ITYP, you can have multiple item types and you can mark one as default. This ITYP actually has to be created before. So where do we create this ITYP item type? So item type has to be created. If you go back, this is your agreement item types. So ITYP. So here you can actually specify the description of the item type. You can also specify that in case from my item type, see there are two ways. Either you can create your freight order, freight booking, service order directly from the item type, or you can do it from a header level as well, right? From the follow-up. Okay. So in that case, you can always specify what is the FO type, MB type, and service order type you want to create. Add service means what? That means you are considering that this item type is not for transportation, but rather it is for service. Service means fumigation service, cleaning service, documentation service, etc. If you want to use in that way, then you can basically click on add service. And again, if you want to provide some preconditions, what we have discussed before, based on stage type, stage category, mode of transport, service level, you can also specify the precondition and the corresponding value. Okay. There are some other fields, for example, deactivate reason. That means if you want to deactivate a freight agreement, then system will ask you for a reason. So if you go back in a freight agreement, if you go to set status, and if you say deactivate it, okay. So system will ask why you want to deactivate. So in that case, you need to tell them a reason. So the reason will be 01. Okay. And then finally, you have to also specify the number range. If you click on this, so this is the number range which you have to give. The number range object is SCM TMS FA. FA stands for freight agreement. Okay. Any question you have?
No, Viren.
That's fine. Viren.
So if I go to any freight order, So if I open any freight order, so if I go to this charges tab, so just to give an example, whenever your freight agreement is there, okay, this is not a good example. Let me see if I have this. Okay, let me go through a settlement. I think that one makes better. Wait. So if I go to any settlement document, from there I'll see the freight order. If I go to overview freight or display freight settlement, okay, so if I open, for example, this FSD type, if I go into a freight order, so how do you know whether a freight agreement, that is a freight agreement, has been referenced while creating a freight order? You need to know that, right? So generally, how we check this? We go into the charts type which has been used in a freight order. Suppose see basic freight. For example, if I select on the first one, I just need to go on show height details. You will see here agreement number comes in. So in this case, if you see there are two charge types, basic freight and fuel charge, and this is the agreement number which is displayed. So if your agreement number is displayed, then you come to know that your charge calculation has happened automatically based on an agreement. If the charge calculation is not happening based on agreement, that means my agreement is not populated. And if I click on the agreement number, so this will be coming automatically. Okay, if your purchase organization and carrier combination is found in the agreement, then it will automatically populate the charge here. So if I now go into my this one, so for example, I go into this basic freight. If I go to display rate table, if I go to dates and values, and if you see for all these different combination, my rate is provided and these are my scale items. So scale item is based on source location and destination location. Clear now?
Yeah.
How does it work?
Yeah, yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. You can. So this is what your freight agreement is. So today I explained the freight agreement. So tomorrow I will start with the from the top up, means from the up to down concept now. Means in the system wise, how will you set up? We need to set up scales, we need to set up charge type, then rate tables and TCCS. So tomorrow, first of all, we'll tackle this scale and charge type. Okay.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. So any question?
So tomorrow configuration we cover that service PO type and service entry sheet type and all that, right?
No, that will no. Tomorrow we'll not start with service pure service entry sheet. We'll start with this configuration, scales, charge types. We'll see where it is configured and all.
Okay. Okay.
And a lot of configuration. So the PO and the PO types and all that will come after settlement. So right now we are just into the charge calculation.
Okay, got it.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. I thought I could have started with the charge type today, but I think that you need some time to go through the agreement because you need to know what we put in the agreement and all. Try to see the agreement today so that tomorrow you can come fresh with, we can start with the configuration, because that agreement field has many, like the agreement document has many fields. Yeah, just see those fields. I don't want to rush too much on this. Just take your time, see, and then let me know.
Yeah, sure. Varun.
Sure.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. We'll talk tomorrow again.
Yeah, thanks, Varun.
Yep. Thanks, Priya.
Okay. See you. Bye.
Yeah, see you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, Naresh. Bye.